Hi there, and welcome to this lesson where we're going to look at the holistic view of the business environment. Okay, this is the first chapter and the first section of chapter 1. So we're going to look at the bigger picture that the business analyst, which in this particular environment is usually called the business architect, will hopefully have a reasonable understanding of to start with and be able to bring that knowledge and understanding into any change initiatives as well. What we'll then be looking after in the next lesson is looking at the closer environment, the external and internal impacts on the business. But right now, let's have a look at how the picture is for the organisation. So remember, some of the things we need to consider are, as we said here in 1.2, we'll look at strategic analysis, look at the process and value streams that the organisation has already, basically the as is, the current environment that the business operates in internally. Any process re-engineering, any data definition, for instance, or events identification that behave happening already. Requirements engineering, the process we have for breaking down requirements, which if you ever watch any of my other videos, and as you would have seen in the AgilePM section of this course, when we looked at the process through foundations, I talk about requirements engineering in a slightly different way. Here we're looking at product-based planning. The point about that is that first of all, we have a product, right? And then we have to turn that product into a requirement. And the way we do that is through the user story format. This helps us understand why it is needed in the change, right? Why is it needed towards the benefit the business is looking for? But then to understand how much that is needed, then we apply the prioritization of Moscow to see whether it's a must, should, or could. So that's the way we look at the requirements engineering. The other purpose of doing that is then we can see the relationship between them, the dependencies between each of those requirements that, various both business and the customers would have offered forward towards what they believe is needed within the project itself, right? And that's why it says discovery and definition of cost-effective, valuable solutions, because from that we can estimate and work out the solution. And this is where the business analyst actually comes into this particular area, right? So, as we said, some of the things they need to look at are strategies, the strategy of the organization, and we'll look at that a bit more picture when we look at the organization's framework actually, and the analysis of those strategies, right? The analysis of those. We need to look at the business capability, looking at the skill sets of the organization as a whole, and its competencies within the staff and the employees that work in the organization. Various current processes need to be considered, current processes need to be looked at, and as we said, this is mapped to skills, right, and competencies of the current labor force, if you like. And any other re-engineering that may go on, re-engineering that may be in process, that may be needed also. Requirements, understand the requirements, right? As we said, to understand what they are relative to the project and the processes we have doing that, requirements engineering, etc. And then finally, discovery, of a cost-effective method to deliver the change. Cost-effective and valuable solutions. So what are valuable solutions? And they need to add value to the organization as a whole, right? So part of the organization is looking at the different levels that the organization operates in. Okay, so we need to look at these higher levels that they operate in. So initially we have the corporate level, and you will find there is a video that looks at the organization as a bigger picture. It looks at corporate level, then looks down at business areas and portfolios, and then explains the operational environment as well as the project environment and the relationship between them, which we'll have a look in a moment in the other picture. So we have the corporate. We then have program areas, looking at the collection of projects for a bigger transformational changes, they say, and then the discrete projects themselves. Okay, so these are part of the various things. So at corporate level or portfolio, you might want to put down portfolio if you have portfolio business area. then this is looking at the overall changes that the organization is looking at throughout a period of time. Most portfolios run, they review year by year and sometimes half yearly, but they tend to run for 5, 10 years, depending on the organization. Some organizations have got changes going on quite regularly and quite quickly, which are much shorter. Other ones, sometimes like in the pharmaceutical R&D, they can be going over a 10-year period. It just depends on how your organization operates. So linked to that, we also have, therefore, various aspects of these. And some of the things we'll look at, one of the acronyms most looks at these. So we have here the mission of the organization. Why are we here? And then the objectives linked to that, right, to understand how the organization is fitting. Right, let me just... So linked to this, we'll have the... Oh, for Pete's sake. Right, so linked to this, we have this acronym called MOST, where we have the mission and the objectives at corporate level, understanding the mission. Why are we here? What is the organization here to do? And therefore some objectives, some measurable objectives that say, have we arrived at our mission at this point in time? Or what do we need to achieve to show that we've arrived or we're delivering our mission, achieving our mission in life? Then at program level, we have the strategy, right? And then to a certain extent also this program level, but also at project level, we have the tactics, right? Right. So sometimes we have the strategies at a level that sort of look at the bigger picture of things, like the bigger transformation, and therefore the tactics are the projects. And interestingly enough, the program itself doesn't really deliver that much. It just therefore accumulates all the outputs from the different projects, and that is the objective. So at the end of the day, it's the projects that actually deliver. They're the tactics. How do we go about it? We'll go to that more detail when we get into that section, looking at the environment of the organization itself internally. Okay. So just to remind ourselves, we also have some points here. So we need to understand, the organization as a whole. The organization as a whole, as you can see here, structure, roles, responsibilities, etc. And these come on part of the resource audit framework as well, which we'll look at. The organization, look at the people that are involved in it. Again, that's linked to some of these things like competencies, the business capability to the organization, and the processes as well to a certain extent, okay? So the people, the skills, the leaders, their capabilities and their understanding, right? And the cultural types, as it says, and the way the organization is structured from that perspective. We have the process, the way the organization works, right? The process within the organization, which can be so varied from one type to another. So from an insurance company to a food and beverage, to a banking company, to a travel industry, they're all different processes, the way they work, right? And finally, we have the technology that supports the function of the organization. Infrastructure, improvement of business processes, etc., across the organization that support the way the organization needs to work. From things from finance to production to goods outwards, etc., and the way we hire people. All these are part of the technology that support the process and help us engage with people and keep our people competent and capable, and therefore the organization also financially is sound and that it has the infrastructure in place to carry on and keep the work and keep itself sustainable, basically. So these are the things we need to understand that you can see here on page 11 in the handbook. Just over on the page in the last section, just to understand a bit more how it fits in here, you can see where these 4 different areas fit into this diagram here. So you can see the organization is the big picture, is the top section here. This is the org, right? That is underpinned by, of course, the people that work there, right? And then by the process and the technology on the side here to support it. So we have the processes, the process here, we have the people in the middle, right, that underpin the organization, and then the technology, again, that's also a supporting function of it. So this is sort of gives you an idea of the view of the organization. And at the same time, if you watch the video I put there about the organizational structure that looks at corporate, and it looks therefore at the two main areas, the operations and the change. Operations run the business, the project change the business, and how these functions fit into the bigger picture. So I hope that's given you a bit of a holistic view at the moment of the organizations in. So when we go and look now at the next section and look at the business environment, when we look at the external and internal influences on the organization, it will make a bit more sense.